Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Neuro, and this is Mindset 101 Class 2. Welcome. Please have a seat anywhere you like. Some of the chairs are a little bit sticky today. Someone spilled something or something happened on quite a few of them, so just be careful where you sit, especially if you're wearing nice pants or a dress. So just double check the seat before you sit down. But welcome. The first class that we did was talking about the evolution of the human brain and how human brains were mainly meant to live in a different kind of society that we live in the modern day. We talked about the increase in brain size from early primates, which were our ancestors, to present day. We also talked about the amount of resources the brain consumes, and we talked about some of our instincts and cognitive bias. And the homework from the first class was to email me one cognitive bias and provide an example. And I have received some homework so far. I know a lot of people have sworn off homework as an adult, and that's valid, but some people still decided to do this with their spare time. One of our lovely students submitted the IKEA effect as a type of cognitive bias. And just reading the definition here, the IKEA effect is a cognitive bias in which consumers place a disproportionately high value on products they partially created. The name refers to Swedish manufacturer and furniture retailer IKEA, which sells many items of furniture that require assembly. A 2011 study found that subjects were willing to pay 63% more for furniture they had assembled themselves than for equivalent pre-assembled items. Wow, because we take part in stuff, we think it is inherently better and more valuable, when really the company saves money by getting us to do part of the work. It's a really silly mindfuck, but it kind of makes sense. For us to have this bias makes sense because if you saw the work done, if you saw the assembly process, you trust the item overall better because you saw how it was done. That makes sense. It makes sense that we would have that bias. So that is a good example. Another one that was submitted was the escalation of commitment, also known as commitment bias. It's where an individual or group faces increasingly negative outcomes from a decision, action, or investment, but continues the behavior instead of altering course. They maintain that the behaviors are irrational but align with previous decisions and actions. And this one, the person who submitted this gave an example of whenever they were still in a WoW guild for a long time and they kept going to raids even though it wasn't fun for them because they felt like they needed to commit to the decision they made to raid with that guild instead of simply stopping as soon as it was no longer fun for them. So a good example of that. Sometimes commitment bias can get people stuck in a bad situation. I think the reason that we might have evolved this bias is because you do need to deal with hard times sometimes when you're dealing with a group of people. Like maybe there is some stress on your family and it is difficult to communicate with people because you're going through difficult stuff. But if you ride out that storm and you stick together, sometimes things can get better later on. So I would guess that bias kind of plays into that potential option of we can still decide to stay committed to this situation, to this group, to this plan because we started it together and maybe it'll turn out for the better for us. But that's definitely a thing where people can get stuck in that. That's one that I definitely have worried about for people raiding in my guild. So I was a guild leader for WoW Classic for 4.5 years. And there were points where you can kind of tell some people are seeming like they're having less fun, getting burnt out, and so on. And I don't want to arm twist people into going to raids, but at the same time, if you want to fill the raid slots, you need people to go. So it's really awkward, like people finding that line of how much more of this game do I want to play, sort of a deal. Yep, commitment bias is real. Another one that was submitted from a student is the framing effect. It's a cognitive bias in which people decide between options based on whether they're presented with positive or negative connotations. So this is basically how people are talking about what they're presenting to you. So rather than you trusting the stats, it's sort of like a car salesman is talking to you about two cars. And they'll be like, well, The Ford is really economical for how it consumes fuel, so that's going to save you money. The Chevy has had some problems with the window braking for some people, and you might just take those two pieces of information and make your decision just because the one has a positive connotation and the one has a negative connotation, even though those are just a single detail on either side. Overall, even though the window might have an issue, it might be a better vehicle and a better fit for you as the consumer, but a lot of times we will just go with the connotation that's presented rather than the overall optimal choice. Framing effect, that's a good one. The framing effect is used on people all the time. Whenever someone's talking shit about other politicians, for example, the way that you frame those politicians and the way you talk about them will affect the way that people vote. So this is one that's definitely used against us in mass media very regularly. So protect yourself from the framing effect and try to pay attention to it. If someone is really going to bat hard to give you connotations for stuff without really good evidence, then maybe be skeptical. Another bias that people submitted was the anchoring effect. It is a psychological phenomenon where an individual's judgments or decisions are influenced by a reference point or anchor, which can be completely irrelevant. And they've had numeric and non-numeric versions of that. Basically, if the way that someone describes something as either being really expensive or really cheap, kind of the way that a lot of bartering is done, can be used to manipulate this, anchoring effect bias. So if someone is trying to, going back to the car salesman option, they're trying to sell you a vehicle and you ask how much it is. If they give you a really high number to start, then you might feel good about arguing it down a little bit when really they gave you a really inaccurate high number, just to mess with you and to start to anchor the conversation high so you think that you're clever in arguing it down lower. Yep, anchoring effect, definitely one for certain. The availability heuristic, yeah, that one is, if you can remember it, you think that it happens pretty often. This is sort of like whenever you stub your toe, you remember all the other times you stubbed your toe on that thing and you feel like you stub your toe all the time, which really you don't. But when it happens, it hurts a lot, so you tend to remember it. So that would be availability heuristic. Another one that we actually suffer with pretty regularly in the present day is we feel like the world is super violent because we have availability of super violent video recordings of stuff that goes on. When in actuality, that kind of violent stuff has been happening all over the world for all of human history and prehistory. And per person, it's less violent today, per person, than it was in the past. But because of our availability heuristic, it looks like the world is very violent and there's a lot of bloodshed right now. And obviously, yes, we still have a lot of things to work on. But the fact that we can see stuff in our face that's like HD violent makes it seem like it's more common than like boring videos of people doing normal shit. That stuff doesn't rise to the top of the metrics as much. We go for the extremes. But Neuro, what if I actually stub my toe a lot? Then you might consider using rubber boots. And you probably are going to absorb a lot of that impact. That's my thought there. Another one that someone submitted was the hindsight bias. It's a tendency for people to perceive past events as having been more predictable than they were. It's the I should have known. I should have accounted for this. You kind of look back on it and you think about what if your preparation was different. It can sometimes be useful to assess that if you're going to direct that toward planning for the future. Like, okay, in the future I need to double check this before I go into this situation. That's valid. But a lot of people will they'll fall into that too often and then they'll beat themselves up about it. They'll make themselves feel bad that they didn't understand the planning of the situation well enough. So the hindsight bias can cause yourself to not be compassionate to yourself as you should be. But yeah, we got quite a few nice biases. IKEA effect, escalation of commitment, framing effect, anchoring effect, availability heuristic, and hindsight bias. Well done, students from the first class. You all get a pass on your homework. Good job. And if anyone wants to turn in their homework late, they can, but you can't choose any of the biases that were in this discussion, because that would be copying other people's homework, and that's illegal and wrong. So don't do that. Okay, so that was last week, talking about evolution of brains and also how our brains have instincts and what some of our instincts are. And then we talked about a few of them here. And the next conversation that I wanted to lead into is the concept of willpower. Willpower as being your agency as a human. As a thinking creature and individual, you can will yourself to do certain things, and you can will yourself not to do other things. And then there are some things that you are drawn toward that sometimes you would prefer you didn't do, but you do them anyway. So we have those decisions that we make that are firm personal decisions. We have those situations where a decision is made for us, or we get pressured into a situation, that kind of a thing. But decision making is a huge part of what defines you as a person, and the amount of will that you can exert on situations can depend on a lot of factors. In a lot of video games like RPGs, willpower is a stat, and that's a stat that allows you to resist being mind controlled and just be able to stay focused on your task. You don't get charmed, MC'd. It gives you immunity to a lot of psychic attacks and that kind of thing. But a lot of people will try to get you to do what they want you to do, even if they're not being fair to you about it. That's like the kinds of pressure that we face in society. A lot of bosses will pressure their employees to work harder than they're actually being paid to work. And they'll get away with it because maybe the person doesn't either have enough willpower, or they don't have a network where they could complain about such a thing. Is there anyone in the chat who has that as an issue? You feel like you have to wrestle with other people's wills trying to push you around? It happens a lot of the time. But there's a deep philosophical question, which I just have on the screen, and you can talk about it as you will or give your thoughts. Free will is something that a lot of people like to talk about. For me, as someone who's studied a lot of brain science, free will is more of a thinking tool. It's a phrase that you can use to describe a lot of what we can do as thinking creatures and as agents in the world. But it's not as cut and dry as either you have it or you don't. In a given situation, the phrase that I prefer to use is, I'll just type it up here, deciding potential is what it's called in brain science. Deciding potential means how much can you decide in a situation. And that's going to depend on what's there. And it's also going to depend on the limitations of your human organism, right? In a situation, you don't have free will in the sense that you can freely will yourself to do anything on a dime. You can't free will yourself into randomly causing a shark to appear in the room and flop on the floor, teleported from the ocean. That would be cool, and you could definitely write that in a book or in a movie or in a comic or something, or in a video game. But we don't have the complete freedom of will to do anything with God power. We have the ability to put in work and physically move things in our environment, or influence others with words and conversation and so on. But free will as a concept is limited on a lot of different factors. So deciding potential, I feel like, is a better term for it. An example that I've given in the past when we've talked about free will is you have more deciding potential whenever you're at an ice cream parlor than you have when you're being chased by a bear. When you're being chased by a bear, your options are a lot more limited, and also the time you have to make that decision is much shorter, so your deciding potential is way less than it would be if you could leisurely browse like chocolate chip. There's another, some kind of almond nut ice cream over here. There's a banana kind of ice cream over here. That's a situation with a lot of deciding potential, whereas the bear is chasing you down. You need to climb a tree if it's not a climbing bear, or you need to run or kind of figure out how to escape. But yeah, your options are very limited, and you don't have the time to make the perfect, most calculated decision. You have to escape. You have to escape. So, deciding potential is a better phrase than free will, but when people talk about free will, I know what you mean. And in the sense of having a society, we do have to hold people accountable for their actions. So the agent ultimately is responsible for what their body does. Even if you don't really, quote, believe in free will, and you don't think that people have complete control over themselves, you should basically treat people as though they do for the purpose of protecting the population with a justice system of some kind. And this is not meant to be a conversation on the US justice system. We have lots of problems. But for justice systems in general, if you do have a violent actor that is actively going to be hurting your people and your community, to isolate them makes sense. That makes sense. But the question is, does that person actually have control over those actions, or is it kind of a snowball effect from stuff that happened to them in the past? Basically, what we decided was, as a society, it doesn't matter. What matters is keeping the rest of the people safe from getting hurt by them. So, yeah, how much free will do humans have? Do we have a lot of free will? Do people make pretty major decisions? Because I feel like a lot of times the most energy efficient and relaxing thing to do is to go with the flow. Not rock the boat, not make waves, be comfortable, just chill, try to exert as little energy as possible. I can absolutely chill and be lazy for long periods of time because it's energy efficient to do so. So we have an incentive to be lazy in that we don't expend as much energy. So we don't need to acquire as much energy. That's part of why cats sleep for 18 hours a day, or however many hours it is. 16 hours a day. A lot of animals sleep a long time because it conserves energy. So we have a natural incentive to not spend energy and be lazy because then we don't have to find as much food because that takes work. So how do you galvanize your own force of will? How do you boost your willpower stat? What are ways of doing that? Random ideas in the chat. Giant Gnome resubscribes and says free will is cringe. He says it's cringe. It has been decreed. Appreciate you, Siam. Drugs, question mark? I don't know if drugs affect your willpower per se. They can certainly lower inhibitions, which in a way is still lowering your willpower, because your willpower doesn't necessarily will you to do things. It can also will you to not do things, right? Willpower can cause you to say, okay, I'm going to go work on this task. I'm going to go on this quest. Or it can also say, I'm going to resist this temptation. So willpower isn't necessarily additive. It can also help you to fold bad hands, to get out of bad situations. Get the facts first. Chat saying they wish they never discovered determinism because you think it's an inherently destructive idea. Yeah, accountability still feels important to us. So I feel like treating humans as though they have some will and sub-agency is good. And I feel like we do. Like the way that people act, it defines them in some way. So I feel like you might as well call it free will, or at least the actions of that person. Phildo Rain, appreciate you. Thank you for sponsoring Mindset 101 Class 2. We are musing upon willpower and will. Free will, if it's free, or deciding potential. One of the things that we have a lot of deciding potential on is what media do you browse? That's crazy. That's one of the ones where I'm super grateful for everyone who's watched my stream or my YouTube videos more than once. That's amazing. Thank you for watching my stuff. Because I know you have so much stuff you could watch. There's so much stuff on the internet. How do you decide what to consume in terms of media? Someone's saying to work on your free will, you need to condition yourself. Most willing people are the ones who have been heavily conditioned by their childhood environment or auto-conditioned themselves. Yeah. One thing that you can do is basically set small hurdles for yourself. If you're in the situation where it's really hard to get stuff done, maybe trying to work in some relatively easy routine that you would consider to be beneficial to you. That can be really good for building confidence. It's kind of like a boxer who's new or out of practice, taking some easier fights to know what winning feels like again before you put them against the really difficult stuff. Because if you are struggling with willpower and you set really lofty, difficult to obtain goals, you're just not going to reach them and then give up, and it's going to be hard to make other goals. So I would go for pretty easy to obtain goals, so you can build the confidence and then you can scale them up from there. This also tends to be good for fitness related goals because that causes your body to not be quite as strained from like a sudden huge amount of working out. If I can share a moment of vulnerability, I made that mistake whenever Trisha and I went to work out at our gym for the first time here. I hadn't worked out at a gym with like the core lifts of squats and leg press and bench and all this. And I pushed myself a lot because I pushed myself very hard in the past and completed the whole workout. I was very sweaty. I was kind of sitting down, catching my breath and stuff. And I was like, I think I may pass on the next set of squats. I'm feeling like I'm really low on oxygen, kind of deprived and stuff. And bounced back up, walking over to the door like, that was a good workout. It's a really nice day. And then I just hear Trisha go, Austin? Austin? I'm like, what the fuck? And I wake up and I had just like passed out. Too pooped out from working out too hard. What I should have done was say, hey, I haven't worked out in 4 years with this particular style of workout. I should maybe take it slightly easier and then I can scale it up over time. But it's okay. I was unharmed, which is good. Phildo used to have pretty good fitness routines, and now you're just not able to get yourself to do it anymore. I will do 10 push-ups with you right now, fam. I'll do it in the middle of class. I'm that teacher. All right, we're doing it now. Anyone who wants to partake in 10 push-ups or however many you want, we are doing them now. I've challenged you. Everyone who's struggling with motivation, now's your door opening. Your door is opening. We're doing it now. Just a quick 10. If you're unable to do them, that's okay. You can also do them with your knees on the ground. Okay. We've done 10 push-ups. Only 10, yeah, that was it. That wasn't about me showing off. That was just about helping people get the ball rolling. That's it. You have no desire to hit a gym, but damn, you want to swim a lot right now. That's awesome. Are you a marine mammal or you just want to swim? Nice. Okay. So that's willpower. When you get yourself to do something. What is another tool for working on your willpower? I will show you. This is a tool that is a very ancient tool. Maybe some of you have heard of this. This is a method, and I know it's kind of like a fringe method, so bear with me, but this is called writing shit down. And what you can do is whenever you want to get stuff done, you write the shit down on paper, and then you put that paper in view of yourself so it taunts you. until it's done, right? You see that on your table and you're like, fuck, I need to do this. This is Mindset 101. We're in class 2 right now, right? I wouldn't have done this shit if I didn't write this stuff down. I would just be doing another Dota game or a StarCraft match, which is valid, but it's not directly the educational content that I'm trying to bring to the table here. What I'm trying to bring to the table is mindset stuff where people can be less butt mad and enjoy video games more. Because I feel like that has huge potential for improving people's lives. Agree or disagree? I'm open to feedback, but I think that's a big thing we can all do better. That'll make gaming way more welcoming. And it should also cause gaming to grow too, because then more people will want to game because gamers are cool and nice. Think about it. Think about it. You have a huge whiteboard with your goals, but that doesn't really help. You have to pick one and start with that. That's too many things. I agree. Whenever you have too many goals, sometimes it gets daunting and you're like, no. But yes, writing shit down. Another cool tactic for working on your willpower is what's called a planner. A planner allows you to set goals that are related to the passage of time. These increments of time can be days, months, or years. And if you have a planner, then you can write down what you're doing for the next successive days, which gives you a lot of momentum whenever you start the day, because you already know what you're going to be shooting for. You already know what you're going to be doing, which means that you've already spent the thinking energy you needed to decide that. Deciding things does take effort, and that's why a lot of times people will get stuck where they can't really make a decision because it takes effort, and maybe they have 2 options or more options that all seem kind of similar and good or similarly bad. So yeah, whenever you use a planner, you can make those decisions ahead of time, so when you wake up that morning you can just run at the goal rather than needing to think about, okay, what am I doing today? Also, the planner thing is new for me. Thank you, Trisha, for encouraging that. I have taken lots of notes and stuff with these spiral notebooks. I love these. I used a bunch of these in university back in the day. Just writing stuff down. Feels good. I like writing things down physically more so than typing, but typing is fun in its own way. I feel like I remember things better whenever I whenever I write as opposed to type. Okay, what's this one? Oh, yeah. Don't mishear it. Run at a goal, not a pole. I mean, a lot of people are into that. You've been reading an ADHD book that talks a lot about why you fail so many times at executive function. Yeah, but I've seen stuff that says ADHD does have lots of survival benefits for how humans have existed in the past. So it's not necessarily something that you even need to think about being unhealthy. It's like a normal way that humans can function. It's just one of the ways they can function. And we definitely have a bias toward the average or normal human type of behavior. I guess neurotypical is the word that we use for that. Chat's asking, what happens when you prioritize? Ooh, that's a very important word for this. This is a very important word. I'm actually going to add this into the notes. I'm glad you said that. Okay, how to set goals, prioritize. No. And plan. And list. Okay. I guess we should do that in a different order. List, prioritize, plan. Yeah. There you go. There you go. What actions are instinctual? Hunger is instinctual. Sleepiness. Sexiness. What else is instinctual? You recently bought a home gym and it's been great for your fitness goals because of the convenience of being at home. True. True. How to set goals. Make them convenient. Making the goals convenient. That's a really good one. So the home gym, by you making it accessible for yourself and removing the need to travel to get to the workout, that means they're a lot more likely to work out. Boredom is instinctual. Yes. Are you talking about laziness specifically or the feeling of boredom? Hygiene. It's more instinctual for some people than others. There are some very smelly people who are fine with it and they don't seem to think there's a problem. And then there's some people who smell very clean and very prepared, and if they ever smell even slightly bad, that's a problem. Yeah, boredom drives creativity. It tells the brain that you should not be satisfied with doing nothing. You should amuse yourself somehow or busy your hands. Okay, so we talked about how to prioritize, how to set our goals, where we make a list, we prioritize which ones are the most important, and then we plan stuff. You're saying fear is another instinct? You know, I could put that. Hunger, tired, sexy, scared. Is that how people are feeling right now? Just all of those at once? Hey, how are you doing today? People give the fake answer. Oh, pretty good. How are you? How they actually feel inside? Hungry, tired, horny, and scared. It's funny. Too true, though. Don't believe my answer. Oh, also, I wanted to talk about gratification versus delayed gratification. So that kind of boils down to how much work time versus leisure time do you give yourself? And how many treats do you give yourself for how hard you work? That's a decision that every person has to make for themselves. Normally, kids have their parents to be their guide as in terms of, no, you cannot have any more Lucky Charms. That's way too many Lucky Charms. You've had so much sugar this morning. You cannot have more Lucky Charms. That's valid, and it's good when parents limit their children's sugar intake. So once you become an adult, how do you stop yourself from getting more Lucky Charms? And then for some people, it isn't even sugar or food that's their motivation or thing they have to tune back. It could be gaming. Maybe some people just keep wanting to spam that extra game. I've had to remove Hearthstone from my phone. That game was too addictive for me when I was like laying down in bed, because it's like I could just do one more arena match and it's not that long. It's only like 10 to 15 minutes. But then you do one of those and you're like, I could do one more. And then you have many nights where you get an hour less sleep than you should have. And then you're like, why do I do this to myself? Uninstall Hearthstone. The one mo. You do 99% leisure, 1% work. That's why you're not a billionaire. So could you describe positive stress? What do you do with positive stress? I would say positive stress, just guessing at what you mean by the word. It's whenever stress is being applied to you that is encouraging you to get something done that's important. And it feels stressful, like you feel the weight of it, but it does motivate you to get it done. Potential topic is the interplay between habits and willpower, how good habits can minimize the damage of low willpower moments. Yes. So one of the things that's related to that is sleep. If you have a good routine of sleep habits, you're going to have more willpower because you have more energy, which means your like executive function can have more power. If you have bad habits and you're tired, it's harder to resist caving into something that you want, but you know might not be the best for you. An example is eating before grocery shopping so you make less impulsive decisions. True. Don't buy groceries hungry. I've heard that one before. Don't go to the grocery store hungry. Every bag of chips will seem like a good purchase when you know you don't need that many chips. We only need 1 to 2 bags of chips. But you go to the store hungry and then you buy all of their chips. Have we discussed addiction? We have not discussed it, but that is valid to discuss here. Is there a type, or are there some types of addiction that you struggle with as a person? And this could be functional addiction too. It doesn't necessarily mean your life is collapsing because of it. It just means that you're very into it, maybe too much into it, and it likes to eat up a lot of your time. Social media, gaming, soda. One bad of every flavor. You were addicted to nicotine for 8+ years? I think a lot of people struggle to talk about stuff like addictions, mainly because it's a point of vulnerability, and we all have the desire to look strong in front of our friends. I definitely do. So yeah, that's a tricky thing. I've been challenged by Trisha a lot, actually, to share more of my vulnerability and maybe the less clean aspects of my character that are kind of fun, I guess, or make me unique in a way. I'm not a person who's motivated by alcohol at all. It's not really something that I feel much of a draw to. I will choose to drink hanging out with friends and stuff sometimes, but it's not really something that I crave or that I've ever really been hooked on. Cannabis I have used fairly regularly for a lot of my adult life. I haven't really felt like I've been physically addicted to it because I would take like years off. It doesn't really matter too much. It's not a very physically addictive drug that causes withdrawal or anything. Alcohol definitely is. Coffee I'm addicted to. So I have quite a bit of caffeine every morning, probably about 3 to 4 shots of espresso worth, if I had to guess the relative strength. So pretty heavy user of coffee, which I think a lot of people might not guess that I'm fairly heavy coffee user. And then, yeah, scrolling Reddit, the internet. For me, it's the pretty stuff on the internet. My visual buttons. Feels good to get those pushed. Give me the dopamine. Coffee would affect your sleep. I don't think it really affects my sleep too much as long as I have it in the morning. If I have it the second half of my day, yeah, it's going to be a problem. 1 large coffee, no sugar, no milk. That's what you have? I have my coffee black as well. I like my coffee black, just like my metal. One thing that's very strong, and this is one of the things that groups like Alcoholics Anonymous do, is they share accountability with people. So you can talk to other people who maybe have your same situation, and you can just check in with them about how you've been doing. If you're trying to cut back on nicotine or alcohol or social media or doom scrolling at night or whatever, just talking with your friends about that so that they know that that's a habit or a behavior for you, especially if you're trying to work on it, can be really, really good. We do tend to perform better when we're being watched, in the sense of showing our best self. Normally people show a better version of their self when other people are looking, and maybe slip more when other people aren't looking. That's super normal for people to do that. So for us to talk to each other and be like, hey, I've been having trouble with this thing and I'm trying to tune that back. It's tough to talk about it because it's sharing your vulnerability with them, but it can be really beneficial in the sense of they can now keep you accountable and talk you through it. So teamwork and communication there is one of our really big elements of social leverage, of we can really use each other and pick each other up from those tough situations, because for one, it shows that this person cares about you enough to hear about what you're going through. And then for two, it also just allows you to vocalize what you're going through so you don't feel alone. People feeling lonely in the world is something that's a very common issue, but it's kind of weird because we have more people in the world than ever before. So you would think that we wouldn't need to be lonely, but a lot of people feel like they don't deserve other people's attention, so they just don't take up space. What do you think of being carnivore? Well, there are lots of carnivores. I think it can be optimal for a lot of people, like cats, lions, wolves are omnivores. I think Komodo dragons are carnivores. So yeah, like if you're a Komodo dragon or something, that's going to be your go-to. You're addicted to death metal dive bombs. Is that when you like stage dive? What's a death metal dive bomb? You were vaping for 6 of the 8 years you were nicotine addicted? Oh, would it give you anxiety if you didn't smoke? Is that cats or cats? I don't think cats with a Z is a carnivore. I think it's pretty hard to be carnivore and not like accidentally eat a banana at some point. Oh, it's a guitar move Skull Monkey's talking about with the death metal dive bomb. That's cool. Nicotine feels like a boost, but it's really just a return to baseline. You think most humans these days are addicted to technology? You go from one screen to another, etc. Yes. The things that we're fed in terms of visual information have a lot of, you could say, treats in them for our brains that make us feel good in some way. Looking at other people makes us feel good in some way because we see people that are either beautiful or they have a happy emotion on their face, or it's just an intense emotion. Like, we get to see a lot of stuff. We also get to see stuff that's like loud propaganda. It's very dank and dense information that has a lot of emotion to it. So it's pretty hard to resist like screens that are flashing too, just because in a hunter-gatherer society or like kind of lifestyle, there weren't TVs around. I don't know if everyone knows this, but like back in caveman times and cavewoman times, there were no TVs, which meant there wasn't a baseball game on while people were having dinner. People just had their dinner. Maybe there was a fire going, but we struggle, I think, now with a lot of loneliness and social gratification because we don't have that genuine face-to-face, I'm looking at you and listening to you while you talk, and we can have a conversation, and you feel seen and heard. A lot of people feel lonely because they don't feel seen and heard face-to-face with another person. They feel like they're just another metric. They're the like on the post. They're in the comments, but I don't know. A lot of people feel like they are not significant enough. And that's mainly, I think, because we don't have as much of the face-to-face. As a parent, limiting screen time for your kids is a huge challenge. Yeah. There's also the question of when do you give your kids a smartphone? And how do you... I guess they probably have like child-safe settings and stuff on them. Yeah, some people feel like they're background characters in someone else's story. There are definitely more like leader personality archetypes, and I don't know if follower is the right word, but there's definitely more supporting personality archetypes, because not everyone wants to be in the spotlight, but I feel like everyone wants to be noticed and seen and valued. Even if you're someone who's more comfortable as a more passive social person, you still want to be seen and known in some context. I feel like almost no one wants to be completely invisible. Did we talk about the second places on the face-to-face note? What? Your kid asked for Fortnite today. Can I play Fortnite today? No. Ask me again in a fortnight. And then your kid has to do research and learn what a fortnight is. So one thing that I wanted to kind of expand upon with this whole willpower discussion is not just getting to the point where you're working on your own willpower. You also need to be able to have the power to ask other people for help. This is one that a lot of people will struggle with, especially if you feel down on yourself. You'll feel like you're not worth other people's time. And that can be a really unhealthy mindset to be in, because you feel like you can't reach out to anyone. You should never feel like that. Humans are amazing, beautiful, interesting, unique creatures on the planet. Like, you have a personality, you have unique experience, you have beliefs and desires, you have some family, like people who are related to you in some capacity. So how do you kind of cultivate that fulfillment? How do you figure that you're seen enough, that you feel good enough, that you're worth asking other people for help? Really, this is going back to our instincts. It's a matter of framing. You have to frame your life situation in such a way that you say, I am worth asking other people for help. It can sting your pride to ask for help sometimes, where you feel like you should be strong enough to just do it on your own. But humans achieve more together than they do solo. We learned this from World of Warcraft. You can't just walk into a 40-person raid and kill the bosses, even if you're hot shit. You need a team. So in life, you need a team as well. And for a lot of your goals, you're going to go way further if you have help from other people. Maybe there's a part of your goal that you could benefit from getting coached on, or researching with someone, or just getting advice, or they could even do a part of it for you if it's some like major project. That's why a lot of people hire others who are experts to do stuff for them. Heck, we even asked Jack to help us moving in some. He lent us his ladder because we wanted to put stuff on our wall, and we didn't have a step stool that was high enough to get up on the wall. But Jack had a tall ladder, and we were like, should we ask for help? It's like, we need help. We need a ladder. So we asked him. And then I saw this guy walking down the heckin' sidewalk with a big-ass ladder over his shoulder like it weighed nothing. And I was like, man, that guy's strong. Oh, that's Jack. And then he let us use the ladder. So don't be afraid to ask people for help. And remember that even when you might feel like you're really down in the dumps and feeling down on yourself, remember that it's always okay to ask for help, especially mental help. Even if you just need to talk to somebody. Let that be a life raft for you. Jack helped people climb the ladder. Exactly, he did. Ladders are dangerous, that's true. You should practice complete ladder safety. Always. I have heard walking underneath the ladder can be bad luck, but I saw Loki do it and he ended up being fine, so it might also just be superstition. One of the biggest goals that I reached that took a lot of work was getting Grandmaster in StarCraft. I got coached by 3 separate people. Fatal Bunny, Juno, and Pig. Oh no, 4, and Petraeus. So they all coached me, which meant that was a lot of people basically telling me what I could do better, so which takes a little bit of humility. I have to admit that their advice is beneficial to me. I have to admit that they know some stuff that I don't. And for me to apply what they said is putting trust in that. But that's definitely a huge edge in getting toward your goal. For any goal that you have that's competitive in nature, meaning that other people are also trying to pursue this goal, you have to accept that it's a competitive environment, and you have to articulate, what are my advantages as a person in this space? What are the things that I have going for me that they don't? It's kind of inherently selfish in a sense, but you have to, if you want to succeed, you have to figure out, okay, a lot of other people were pushing for Grandmaster in StarCraft. How was I going to pass them when a lot of them have more experience than me to start? They have more total matches when I'm walking into StarCraft and Heart of the Swarm. How do I pass them? My main edges to get to GM before them were I was able to play full time, thanks to Kukyo, who was my roommate at the time. So that was a big edge that he gave me. That wasn't my own. And then I had a really stable mindset from my poker background, which meant that when I lost, I just did replay analysis instead of getting butt mad. And then another edge that I had was keeping a practice journal. That was a huge one for organizing, okay, this is when I'm losing drones to adepts. This is when I need to make those lings to defend those adepts. This is when I took damage against the Oracle. This is when I need to make spores for the Oracle. Those kinds of incremental, just listing out for yourself, this is what I'm working on, and just going through from the early game to the late game and polishing your whole match. It takes a lot of work to do that, and I'll be honest, I don't keep a practice journal for my StarCraft play all the time. I do that in bursts for when I'm like trying to push my MMR up and so on. But yeah, practice journal is absolutely a major way to drive up your ranks and your results. Any advice for people that think maintaining relationships is a lot of work? For example, a robot or an alien. Are you saying you're a robot or an alien? Relationships are a lot of work. It also depends on what your expectations are for the relationship too. And the compatibility of you and the other person is another huge factor. For some relationship, it doesn't really take as much work because there's a natural harmony with personality types. Trisha has a really good friend who's a really amazing like complement personality to hers. So whenever they hang out, they vibe super well and basically never clash just because they have complementing personality types. Trisha alien detected. Everybody can reach GM, or is it just for a few? I wouldn't say everybody can, just because not everyone can commit the time that it takes to do that. You do need to put in probably at least 5,000 games, maybe 5,000 to 10,000. So that's going to rule out a lot of people who just don't have the time. Giant Gnome thinks everyone can do it. Maybe if everyone had the optimal conditions, but it's tough. What is a complementary personality type? It sounds arbitrary. It's basically a fancy way of saying people you get along with. That's what I mean. People you get along with. The way that they talk doesn't upset you, and the way that you talk doesn't upset them. You naturally get along. Some people clash. I'm using this as a contrast to people who clash with each other. Yeah, it's 200 GM slots per server. You often fall to nihilism when setting goals after a day. When it's pointless, we're going to die after a while anyway. Yeah, but the flip side is you do create a lot of ripple effects with your life. and what you do does impact other people. And what we do now is impacted by the ripples of people who were around before us. So we are still overall a part of this ocean of human history. That's a lot of human history that has existed, and we are all a part of this. Any individual's part is fairly small. Even Drake. Even Genghis Khan. In the grand course of time, his part is getting smaller and smaller. Even though he conquered a bunch of shit and killed a bunch of people and got his name very famous. Is the topic of apathy relevant? Yes, I would say apathy is a necessary thing to practice for a lot of situations that you can't change. I would say that's one of the defenses against being super mad all the time at all the injustice in the world. If you focus on all the injustice in the world all the time, you will just be a wreck of sadness and tears and anger and rage. It's not possible to stare into the abyss all the time. You do have to say, okay, well, I know there's conflicts all around the world, but I can't stare at them my whole day just hoping that they get better. I need to make my own situation better with what's around me. So it's not necessarily, I would say, apathy in the sense that you don't care. It's apathy in the sense that you choose not to invest emotional and physical energy in spaces where you can't change it. The Clash opening. Any insights as to the differences between clashing intentionally and clashing unintentionally, and caring or not caring about clashing? Yeah, there are some different levels to that. You're talking about the caring or not caring about clashing. That kind of depends on how harmonious you're trying to fit in with the group versus how boisterous do you want the conversation to go. Because some social groups are actually really openly confrontational in a way that's normal and that's okay and cool. They like to argue a bunch, or they're loud. It's just more aggressive and combative conversation types. And then you have some families that are very, very quiet and very, very passive and non-confrontational. So different people are raised in different ways, and different people also have different personalities for how forward-leaning or backward-leaning they are with conversation. And then there's stuff like manners and etiquette of being polite and addressing people respectfully and kind of following all of those conventions. A lot of times people will clash, not because they necessarily have conflicting personality types, but because someone will disrespect someone else, and that makes them upset. So some examples there would be demanding shit of people, talking down to people or bashing them. A lot of them will react negatively to that. What do you do with people who only talk behind your back? I would say you reserve no trust for them. They are not trustworthy if they're talking shit behind your back. And also, you know that if they're talking shit behind your back, they're probably talking shit about other people too, and that's just what they do. There are some people who get consumed with gossip. Gossip is also an indulgence, kind of like drugs, because gossip gives people the rush of their finding out naughty information that's important. They're getting in on the scoop of the drama of what's going on. And that gives them probably neurotransmitters like dopamine and serotonin. You've realized something intense just happened, and you now have that information. That feels like a feather in people's cap. People have been wrong about you. Yeah, but we define ourselves every day. That's another thing about people as well, is you are who you are, but who you will be over the course of your life depends on what you do every single day. People can change. Change is hard, but change is definitely possible. Gossip evolved for a reason. Sure, yeah. One of the ways that gossip keeps people alive is it allows you to share secrets when sometimes they need to be shared. Say, for example, there's a big, mean, angry caveman who, when he's in a room with someone, he beats them up. And someone shows up to the tribe, like, kind of beaten up. And maybe the angry caveman is there, so they can't say anything in front of that guy because he would beat them up. But you could maybe whisper to someone else, hey, that guy beat me up, kind of a thing. And then the word gets around that, hey, don't go alone with that guy because he'll beat you up. So you could say that spreading information in a covert way does have survival value, for sure. But like anything that has survival value, it can be overdone to the point of it being unhealthy, where some people will be gossip kings and queens, where that's all they do is gossip. They're the center of gossip. And sometimes they actively try to fan the flames of drama to create more entertainment for themselves. So yeah, gossip can definitely be a indulgence for people that you have to manage. It's not really one that I'm very interested in. It's interesting too that for streamers, we get lots of benefits for gossiping. Talking about other people and stuff, that's pretty big. You get a lot of traction if you weigh in on the current drama of the day. You don't care for gossip, but you like to point out people's flaws in the hopes that they want to improve. When is it okay to criticize fellow humans? That's a good point as well. Because what a lot of people will do is, instead of focusing on self-improvement, they will point out other people's issues instead. Say they have 1 hour of time to spend freely. A lot of people, instead of spending 1 hour to write their book a little bit, to write an hour of their book, they will spend an hour talking shit about a book that someone else wrote and get to feel very smart while doing so, because they, with their superior intellect, have ascended above the entire work of literature and can cast down their judgment upon it, which is a very high position to be in. But writing an hour of a book isn't even like 1/100th of how much time it takes to write a book. So you're like someone who's working with a few word scraps that isn't published and isn't done. That's a very low position to be in. And I think that's why so many people get stuck in the rut of being the harsh critic with everything. This new game sucks so bad. It's so bad. Ah. That's the seat of the critic, because it gives people a feeling of power that they are better than that whole work of art, and they're going to explain why it's wrong to pole vault themselves over the whole thing and feel very good. But to actually make a video game is extremely hard to do. So yeah, you have to direct your willpower in ways that you perceive yourself to be gaining more value over time, if you can. I've been working on a lot of willpower stuff since moving to LA down here. Going to bed earlier, waking up earlier, working out more. Living cleaner, that's something that Trisha's helped me with too. Cleaner clothes, cleaner floors, cleaner toilets, and so on and so forth. Love you. How about the relationship of willpower with confidence and humility? How do you stay away from arrogance? So I think it's pretty easy to stay away from arrogance anytime you get destroyed in a video game. There are going to be people who can beat you at stuff. So it's pretty easy to be humbled if you're willing to take difficult fights. People who struggle with arrogance are usually people who are bullies, in the sense of they will only show up to fights that they were going to win, and they won't ever practice with anyone who's better than them, because that makes them look bad. No spiders with names in the bathroom. I don't have any spiders with names. You don't approve the new stream times. We're still ironing out schedule and stuff. I wonder if I stream early, if that's good for you. Because on some days I am awake at like 8 something, So it's possible that maybe for one day of the week or something, I could have a really early start to my stream. That's definitely within my power. I could start at like 9:30 Pacific time, which would be very early for you. That would be like your afternoon, early, late afternoon. Yeah, that's something that I'm trying to get a better sense of, is what is a good routine for me to be able to get all the stuff done that I need to get done. If I can expand upon the different things that I do as a streamer, one of the things that is the easiest and most comfortable for me to do is to ladder with commentary or Dota with commentary, stuff like that, where I know how to kind of go on autopilot with it, and I can improv the funny stuff that's happening during the matches. So the game is giving me material to work with and to talk about. That's like the lower effort. I'm streaming, I'm live. Maybe the energy is good and I'm doing improv, but it's simpler. And then there's harder effort stuff, or higher effort stuff, like adulting. It's not as fun. Lower motivation to do that, but you have to do that. Cleaning. One of the things I'm working on is posting on social media and stuff. So being present on other platforms is going to help me meet a lot of new people that wouldn't otherwise see my content. I tend to stick to my lane a lot with Twitch, which limits me in some ways. I have not heard of Mr. Sapolsky's take on free will. You woke up at 3 a.m. Good morning. Dota with friends that don't give up is the best. Hell yeah. As I walk through the valley where I harvest my grain. Yep. Amish paradise. Yeah, I have a TikTok and an Instagram, and they're popping off now. I've been tweeting as well. I'm not sure where else I should post, but that's a good start. I've heard that you're supposed to throw up stuff to TikTok like 3 times a day. That platform didn't exist when I started streaming, so it's definitely new for me, but I think I can do well on it. The short form, silly content, or even just taking something like this class and boiling it down to some of the key moments is something pretty big that I want to do more of, because not everyone has the attention span or the patience or even just the personal time to be able to watch this class here. We can probably wrap up pretty soon, but it's a little over an hour, which is a lot of time. You could listen to a class like this without watching it, but that still is a lot of time. But for the purpose of what I'm trying to get across here, if we were to boil this down into a really short form thing, Willpower, the class title, and then the notes here, just blast through the notes, and then throw up something that's 30 seconds to 60 seconds. Is it still called tweeting now that it's X? You're right. I think it's probably Xing or crossing. It's probably called crossing because an X is like a cross. So you need to be crossing into the conversation. I vote for crossing. Exiting. It could be exiting. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagrams, Reels feels like they scramble your brain, like you're devolving. It can definitely be very random, especially if it's serving you lots of different categories at once. X gon' give it to you. Scissoring? We can't call it scissoring because of the sexual connotation. That would imply things that people wouldn't want implied, especially when they're just trying to communicate with someone. They would want to do something like that, you know? Call it tweeting to spite Elon. It is interesting now that we have billionaires who have the wealth of small nations unto themselves, which means they can do crazy projects. That's part of why we might end up getting to Mars with a company earlier than we get there with a government. So yeah, Willpower is a huge part of your mindset. Massive part. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Love you, bye. A massive salad. It would basically be a invisible salad, though. I'll show you. Toon Khan, what is up, my brother? Says cross-posting is massive for creators. People that might catch your content on multiple platforms is slim, so you're giving your content to brand new people. Yes. And there are a lot of people who are loyalists to a certain platform that just don't go to the other ones. So if I don't go there, then they will never see me. Why would the government need to go to Mars gold mines? That's one of the things that's a good question. Oh, thank you. Hummus too. That's a good question. What is the incentive for a government to invest in love you, bye. In colonizing a local planet, a nearby planet? What is their benefit? Because governments use money, they use people's money, and they need to get that from somewhere, and they need to justify that to the people unless they're an authoritarian regime or corrupt, or both. So to go to Mars would have to take a lot of taxpayer money. How do they justify that to the people? What is the upside? Because I'll be honest, the weather on Mars is not as good. The views, debatable, but they have 0 forests, 0 oceans, 0 lakes. It's kind of shitty. Have I talked about being politically correct? No, but I could. There is a willpower skill in choosing not to use racial slurs. Some people need to resist that call more than others. But sometimes the politically correct way is the correct way because there's a reason for it that makes sense. Think about it. Think about it. Much of the mining done on a planet consumed on the planet. There aren't a lot of consumers on Mars. That's true. It's very expensive to ship stuff. I would guess that you can't get 2-day Amazon Prime shipping from Mars to the Earth. Have I read Martian Chronicles? No. That's a woogie. What was the incentive to land on the moon? To defeat the Soviet Union. Everyone knows that. And we won. That's the thing. We had a rivalry that could have been a war, but we made it into a space race, and that was a very healthy choice. Can we give the US and the Soviet Union some credit for not nuking each other and choosing a space race instead? Let's give it up. Let's give it up. Making spaceships is better than nuking each other. Let's give it up. We didn't nuke each other and we went to the moon instead. There was a moon landing yesterday that was unmanned. Was it unwomaned as well or just unmanned? We only won if we ignore the fact that they made it to space first. No, but we win in the category of getting to the moon first. And besides, we already got to space first in the US because George Washington was 37 stories tall. I just got a follow from that joke. Let's go. Thank you. Nuke nopers, moon nodders. You can get second every lap of a race, but you come in the final lap, number 1, you win. That's true. That's true. It doesn't matter if you were behind the whole time. If you are ahead at the end, you win. Can we talk about those sweet, sweet chops? Thank you. Yeah, Trisha said she likes the look of them, so. They chillin'. And they don't get in the way of smooches. I've spoken. Well, awesome. I feel like we had a nice conversation. We talked about the the willpower that we try to practice in the world. I wish you all ever increasing willpower in making decisions, in deciding what you're going to do with your life, in prioritizing what matters, in being able to also will away the influence of people who are trying to lead you astray. Make lists for yourself, prioritize the most important stuff, plan it out in a planner, keep a practice journal if you want to get better. You have your instincts. You need to create good habits and good routines for yourself so your body has full energy and you can kick butt and you can be successful. Mindset 101. Mindset 101. The homework for this next week, and this is always optional. I'm not grading these. There's not going to be a GPA. And because they remove corporal punishment, I'm sorry to admit, but we cannot give you spankings if you don't turn in your homework. So there's no punishment for not receiving your homework. The homework this week is tell me one thing by email that you are working on ramping up for yourself, that you feel like is a part of your life, that you are using willpower to create a set of goals to kick some butt and do better. Because the accountability can sometimes help. Just telling people what you're working on can be good for feeling noticed and also feeling like what you're doing is on the right track. But I want these conversations to be interactive, where you're weighing in, you're also bringing stuff to bear in the conversation that maybe I wouldn't have thought of. As a note, I'm not a doctor or an expert. This is kind of like the Agent Smith disclaimer. So if I said anything wrong, stupid, or biased, just let me know in the YouTube comments and give me a really scathing review. Scathing review, 1 star, no tip, right? Just let me know. Because I could have gotten some stuff like way messed up this time. But I have wanted to talk a lot more about mindset. And for me to be outside of a game and be in the just chatting category, I can read all of chat. I don't miss stuff. I do miss stuff whenever I'm playing Dota and StarCraft. But whenever I'm in just chatting, I usually don't. So that's good. But thank you all for tuning in. Email me at neurozerg@gmail.com if you would like to respond to the homework for this next week. The homework is to list something to me that you are working on and practicing and improving with your willpower and your goals. What are you working on in life? If you don't think I'm going to check the homework, I'll remind the teacher before the next class ends. Yeah, he's going to remind me. I did get all the homework from people who sent it in. Just to read that list again. The people who successfully turned in homework were Senju, Dr. D. Handler, Warshot, Gundur, and VK. All of these people submitted their homework and receive an A+, 4.0, flying colors. The next test may be graded on a curve because it's going to be really hard. This has been Mindset 101, Lecture 2 on willpower. Next time, we're going to talk about, let me just check the syllabus. Next time, we're going to talk about media uses and risks, new opportunities with technology and media, and we'll talk about machines, networks, and AI. So basically the robo-future that is before us. Cyberpunk is now. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for supporting the neuro-related products.